The very back of the property had always been defined by a tall wall of ancient stones. It was a sturdy structure, built many decades ago, its irregular blocks joined by mortar that time had darkened. Over the years, nature had fully embraced this barrier. A thick curtain of ivy cascaded from the top all the way to the ground, forming a continuous green wall that swayed ever so gently when the breeze whispered through. Tomas had known that wall since he first arrived. He had grown accustomed to gazing at that mass of dark leaves, accepting it as the boundary, the very edge of the space. But that morning, something in the sunlight revealed a detail that had previously gone unnoticed. Maybe this is just another one of those quiet stories made to help you relax. And sometimes, that's all we really need. There was a subtle depression in the curtain of leaves, a straight vertical line that didn't seem natural. Tomas walked slowly over the dew-kissed grass, approaching the back of the property. The air was fresh, carrying the clean scent of morning. He stopped before the green wall and reached out. His fingers touched the cool ivy leaves, and he began to push aside the thick branches. The plant was densely intertwined, forming a resistant web. He pulled the cluster of vines to the side, feeling the fiber's resistance, and the sound of dry leaves breaking accompanied the movement. Behind that thick layer of vegetation, his fingertips found something hard, smooth, and cold. It wasn't stone, it was wood. He used both hands to open a wider space in the ivy curtain. The stems yielded with a muffled snap, revealing the surface of a door. It was a solid wooden door, darkened by time and dampness, set right into the stone wall. The top of the door formed a gentle arch, mirroring the surrounding stone structure. Tomas felt a quiet curiosity bloom within him. He continued to pull at the climbing vines, tearing away the stems that had rooted themselves in the wood's crevices. The scent of damp earth and crushed sap rose into the air as he cleared the entrance. In the center of the door, there was a large, darkened iron ring, covered by a thin layer of rust and moss. Tomas ran his hand over the metal. The texture was rough, bearing the marks of time it had spent exposed to the elements, untouched. He grasped the ring. The metal was cold. He pulled the fixture upwards. There was a sharp creak, a sound of iron scraping against iron that broke the morning silence. The ring moved with difficulty, but it yielded. Tomas placed his other hand on the wooden surface and pushed. The door didn't budge. It seemed welded to the ground by the accumulation of earth and dead leaves at its base. He stepped back, looked at the door's bottom, and used his boot to clear away the thick layer of debris that had piled up there. The earth was compacted, dark and heavy. He scraped the sole of his boot several times, creating a small furrow beneath the wood. Then he grasped the iron ring again, braced his feet, and pushed with the full weight of his body. The wood groaned. A deep, long sound echoed through the stones. The ancient hinges creaked, releasing tiny flakes of rust that fell to the ground. The door yielded a few inches, pushing the loose earth before it. Tomas took a deep breath and pushed again. The space opened just enough for him to pass through. A breath of cold, still air escaped from within, carrying a profound scent of dormant earth, long fallen leaves, and dampness preserved in shadow. He released the ring and stepped through the open gap.
His eyes needed a few moments to adjust to the change in light. What he saw on the other side made him stop in silent awe. Behind the wall, there was a garden, not an empty space, but a place once cared for, now completely surrendered to nature's wild growth. The ground was covered by a thick carpet of dry leaves and tall weeds. Shrubs had grown unchecked, stretching long, thin branches in every direction. In the center, large trees extended their arms, forming a canopy of leaves that allowed only narrow beams of sunlight to pass through. It was a space contained by high walls on all four sides, a secret square that time had forgotten. The silence within was different here. It was a dense quiet, shielded from the wind and distant sounds. Tomas took a step forward. The tall, dry grass brushed against his legs. He looked to his left, where a mound of foliage seemed to hide a stone structure, and then to his right, where the dry branches of a tree touched the ground. Despite the neglect, there was a tranquil beauty in the way nature had filled every space. The place didn't seem dead, merely dormant. He looked at his own hands, still smudged with earth and ivy sap. The fresh air of the hidden garden touched his face. There was no urgency, no rush, but an immediate clarity settled in his mind. This space yearned to breathe again. This garden needed to be rediscovered, layer by layer. Tomas decided he would spend the next few days here. He would clear, organize, restore what lay hidden beneath the weight of time. He took one last look around, feeling the quietude of the surroundings, and turned to go back through the half-open door. He needed to fetch his tools. The work was about to begin. Tomas returned to the hidden garden carrying a pair of thick leather gloves, long-handled pruning shears, a machete, and a metal rake. He stepped through the heavy wooden door and set the tools on the ground, near the entrance. The air within the walled space began to warm slightly as the sun climbed higher in the sky, but the shade of the large trees still kept the atmosphere cool and damp. He pulled on his gloves, feeling the stiffness of the leather mold to his fingers. The first step was to clear a path. The tall weeds and unruly shrubs dominated almost the entire surface, creating a visual and physical barrier within the first few feet. He picked up the pruning shears. The tool was heavy, with sharp blades and polished wooden handles. Tomas approached the first large bush that blocked the way. Its branches were long, thin, and full of small thorns, growing in a chaotic tangle. He positioned the shears blade at the base of one of the thicker branches and squeezed the handles. The sound of a dry, clean snap echoed through the garden. The branch fell, opening a small gap in the foliage. He repeated the motion. Snap after snap, the shears cut through green wood and dry wood with the same precision. The rhythm of the cutting became constant. Cut, pull the loose branch, toss it aside. The scent of fresh sap began to spread through the air, a green, astringent, and vibrant aroma that contrasted with the smell of old earth and decaying leaves. Each time a cluster of branches was removed, a little more light reached the dark ground. When the main bush was reduced to a manageable base, Tomas picked up the machete to tackle the tall weeds. The blade sliced through the air with a soft hum, striking the stems of the weeds near their roots. The sound was gentle, a continuous rustle of falling vegetation. He advanced slowly, swinging his arm in a rhythmic motion from right to left. The effort began to warm his shoulders and arms. He felt the weight of the movement, the resistance of the thicker plants, and the ease with which the finer leaves yielded. Behind him, a trail of debris-covered earth began to form. The space was being reclaimed step by step. He paused for a moment, wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his cotton shirt, and looked back. The contrast was evident. Where before there had been an impenetrable wall of weeds, now there was an open path, flanked by piles of cut vegetation.
The environment seemed to have sighed, gaining width and depth. Tomas leaned the machete against the wall and picked up the metal rake. The ground was covered by a layer of dry leaves that must have accumulated for years. They were dark leaves, damp underneath and brittle on the surface. He extended his arm and pulled the rake towards him. The metal teeth scraped the earth with a harsh, satisfying sound. The movement dragged a large quantity of dead leaves, twigs, and root remains, revealing the black, compacted earth. He pulled the rake again, creating a clean line on the ground. The scent of the exposed earth rose immediately. It was a rich, deep smell, reminiscent of rain and roots. He continued his work, forming small piles of leaves and debris along the edges of the garden. The constant sound of metal scraping the earth created a repetitive and calming melody. Pull, gather, advance. The physical effort was continuous but unhurried. He felt the soil's texture changing beneath his boots as the soft layer of leaves gave way to the firmness of the bare earth. On one of the rake's passes, the tool caught on something resistant. It wasn't a root. The sound was not that of wood yielding, but a dull, hard, dry thud. He stopped. He pulled the rake back and looked at the ground. Beneath the thin layer of earth that still remained, there was a grayish edge. He knelt, feeling the dampness of the soil seep through the fabric of his pants. With gloved hands, he began to clear away the loose earth around that edge. The material was rough and cold. He dug a little deeper with his fingers, pushing the decomposed leaves aside. Gradually, the shape of a flat, rectangular stone emerged from the soil's darkness. It was perfectly level, though covered by a thin layer of dark moss. He rubbed the stone's surface with the palm of his hand, revealing its light gray color beneath the grime. He looked ahead, imagining the line that stone pointed to. With his hands, he scraped the earth a few inches further. His fingers found another hard surface. He cleared the area. Another stone, identical to the first, separated by a small space of earth. He had found a path, a stone path that crossed the garden, completely swallowed by time and vegetation, silently waiting beneath the surface. The discovery changed how he saw the space. The garden wasn't just a fenced-off patch of land. It had a backbone, an intention, a route someone had laid out long ago. Tomas slowly stood up, shaking the earth from his knees. He looked at the invisible line the stones suggested, stretching towards the center of the hidden garden. The clearing work had revealed the place's first structure. He picked up the rake again, but now his movements would be different. He wasn't just cleaning the ground, he was unearthing the path that would guide his next steps. The stone path became the focus of Tomas's attention. To bring it back to the surface, the rake was no longer enough. He brought a small, rounded shovel, a stiff, bristled brush, and a bucket of water. The work required closeness to the ground. He knelt at the beginning of the trail, near the entrance door, and began to investigate the path's full extent.
The first stone was clear, but the followings were almost entirely submerged in the black, compacted earth. Tomas dug the tip of the small shovel into the edge of the second stone. The earth was hard, clinging to the sides of the gray block from years of rain and compression. He forced the shovel down and used it as a lever. The earth yielded in solid blocks, detaching from the stone's edges with a muffled sound. He used his hands to remove the pieces of earth, piling them to the side. The next stone was sunken, uneven compared to the others. Time and water had washed away its supporting base, causing it to tilt to one side. Tomas dug the shovel deeply beneath the stone and pulled the handle back. The heavy stone shifted. He held it with both hands, feeling the rough texture and dense weight of the material, and lifted it from the hole. The bottom revealed a mixture of dark sand and thin white roots that had infiltrated the empty space.
He cleaned the roots with his fingers, pulling the fragile threads that broke easily. Then he took some of the loose, dry earth that had accumulated on the edges and put it into the bottom of the hole, creating a new bed. He spread the earth with his hand, leveling the surface. Carefully, he lifted the stone again and lowered it into its original place. The block settled with a solid thud. Tomas pressed the top of the stone with both hands, applying his body weight. It didn't wobble, it was firm, aligned with the previous ones. He advanced along the path, stone by stone. The process was slow and methodical, digging the edges, loosening the hardened earth, checking the level, lifting sunken stones, filling the base, replacing them. The sound of the metal shovel scraping against the stone became the soundtrack of that morning. It was a sharp, quick sound, followed by the soft sound of earth being removed. The constant scent of damp soil and exposed roots enveloped Tomas as he worked. His leather gloves became covered in a thick layer of dark mud. In some parts of the path, moss had created a thick green crust over the stones. It was wet moss, almost like heavy velvet. In these moments, Tomas set the shovel aside and picked up the stiff bristled brush. He dipped the brush into the bucket of water. Drops dripped onto the ground as he carried the brush to the stone. He scrubbed the surface vigorously. The water mixed with the moss and earth, creating a brown foam that trickled down the sides of the stone. The sound of the brush scraping the stone was harsh and rhythmic. Scrub, wet, scrub again. Gradually, the green and brown gave way to the pale, clean gray of the original material. Tomas used an old cloth to wipe away the excess water and grime. The wet stone gleamed under the filtered light that fell from the trees, revealing small veins and imperfections on its surface. It was gratifying to see the light color emerging from the dark, block after block. The path made a gentle curve in the middle of the garden, winding around the base of one of the large trees. Tomas followed the curve, unearthing the stones that had been almost swallowed by the thick roots growing on the surface. He took care not to harm the ancient roots, merely clearing the space around them and adjusting the stones so they coexisted with the tree's dark wood. The interaction between the man-cut gray stone and the time-shaped brown root created a natural design on the ground. After hours of careful work, he reached the end of the trail, which terminated near the wall opposite the entrance. Tomas slowly stood up, feeling the stiffness in his legs and back. He took off his dirty gloves and placed them on the wall. The air felt lighter now, warmed by the sun as it approached midday. He walked back to the beginning of the path, near the wooden door. He turned and looked at the completed work. Where before there had only been a continuous floor of rotten leaves and dark earth, now there was a clear, defined line. The gray stone path contrasted sharply with the clean soil around it. The stones were level, clean, solid. They invited one to walk. The garden's structure was beginning to make sense. The path guided the eye, organized the space, and established an order that had been lost. Tomas stepped on the first stone. He felt the firmness beneath his boot. The sound of his step on the clean stone was short and dry. He walked to the center of the garden, following the trail he himself had brought back into the light. The ground was ready. Now he needed to look up. In the center of the garden, flanking the curve of the newly uncovered stone path, stood two ancient trees. Their trunks were thick, covered in deep, wrinkled bark, marked by shades of dark brown and gray. Their canopies were immense, but they were suffocated. Over years of neglect, many branches had dried and died, yet remained entangled in the tree's structure. These dead branches formed a brittle gray web that blocked the sunlight, preventing rays from reaching the soil and stifling the growth of new leaves. The air under the trees felt stagnant, trapped in a cage of dry wood. Tomas brought a light but sturdy aluminum ladder and a pruning saw with a curved blade and sharp teeth. He also picked up smaller pruning shears for the thinner branches. He stopped under the first tree and looked up, studying the canopy's structure. It was easy to distinguish dead wood from live wood. The dry branches were opaque, rigid, lacking the subtle flexibility of branches carrying sap. They crossed the space in a disordered tangle, rubbing against each other when a rare breeze managed to pass. He opened the ladder and firmly set its 4 rubber feet on the leveled earth beside the stone path. He shook the structure with his hands to ensure it was stable. Satisfied, he placed the pruning saw in his tool belt and began to climb. The aluminum steps creaked faintly under the weight of his boots. Upon reaching the middle of the ladder, he was immersed in the lower part of the canopy. The scent there was different from the grounds. It was a dry, dusty aroma, with a hint of old wood and dehydrated bark. Tomas chose his first target, a thick, barkless branch that projected horizontally, casting a large shadow over a significant area of the garden. He held the branch with his left hand. Its texture was rough and cold. With his right, he drew the saw and positioned its curved teeth at the branch's base, near the main trunk. He pulled the saw towards him. The metal teeth bit into the hard wood with a harsh sound. He pushed the blade and pulled again, establishing a rhythm. Zuzz, 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 zuzz. The saw's cut through the dry wood sliced the garden's silence. A fine shower of yellowish sawdust began to fall, floating slowly in the still air and dusting Tomas's shirt. The dead wood offered resistance, but the blade was sharp. With each stroke, the groove deepened. The tension in the branch began to shift. Tomas felt the vibration of the cut through the hand holding the wood. He slowed the saw. With a sharp, sudden snap, the last wood fibers broke. The heavy branch came loose. Tomas guided it so it didn't hit the ladder and let it fall. The thud of the branch hitting the soft earth raised a small cloud of dark dust on the ground. Immediately, something changed. With the removal of that obstacle, a direct beam of sunlight pierced the canopy and struck the garden floor. It was a pillar of golden light, bright and warm, illuminating a stretch of the stone path. Tomas looked at the illuminated ground and felt the satisfaction of the space opening.
He continued the work. He moved along the ladder, reaching smaller branches with the pruning shears. Clack, clack. The thin, dry branches fell quickly, raining onto the clean grass. When an area was clear, he would descend, move the ladder to another point on the trunk, check its stability, and climb again. The process demanded concentration and strength. His arms began to ache with the continuous effort of sawing above shoulder height. Sweat trickled down his neck, mixing with the fine sawdust that covered his skin. On the second tree, the tangle was even worse. 2 large, dry branches had crossed and locked into each other, forming a knot of dead wood. Tomas positioned the ladder with care. He needed to saw the first branch into 2 parts to free it. The scent of sawdust filled the air, a warm, woody smell. When the knot was finally undone and the pieces fell to the ground, a large portion of the canopy opened up. The change in the environment was profound. The oppressive ceiling of dead branches had disappeared. Now the blue sky was visible through the remaining green leaves.
Sunlight no longer fell in narrow, timid beams, but in large, bright patches that warmed the earth and stones. The air began to circulate freely. A light breeze passed through the garden, and Tomas could hear the soft rustle of live leaves swaying, a green whisper that had once been muffled by the dry wood. He descended from the ladder for the last time and put away the pruning saw. The ground around the trees was covered with cut branches, sawdust, and loose bark. He spent the next few minutes gathering the wood, breaking the smaller branches with his hands, and piling everything in a corner of the property, near the stone wall. When the ground was clean again, Tomas stood on the stone path and looked at the trees. They seemed taller, lighter. Their natural forms had been restored. Without the weight of the dead wood, the live branches appeared to stretch towards the newly discovered light. The garden breathed. The shade was now dappled with sun, creating a mosaic of light and darkness over the bare earth. The environment had lost its sense of confinement. It was open, clean, and ready to receive new life. With sunlight now bathing much of the garden, details previously hidden in the shadows began to reveal themselves. In the right corner, near the back stone wall, lay a large mound covered by a thick tarp of ivy and accumulated leaves. The light struck it directly, highlighting the mound's irregular shape, which didn't seem to be just a pile of earth. Tomas walked towards it, feeling the sun's warmth on his back. He pulled away the vines covering the structure. They yielded easily, revealing the edge of a carved stone basin. It was a small fountain set against the wall. The structure was simple, a semicircular basin projecting from the wall, supported by a smooth stone base. Above the basin, emerging directly from the wall's stones, was a small metal pipe, darkened by oxidation. The basin, however, was completely full, not with water, but with thick black mud, formed by years of decomposed leaves and dust. Small weeds had rooted in that sludge, transforming the fountain into a forgotten planter. The metal pipe was blocked by a hard crust of limestone and dry dirt. The silence of that garden's corner confirmed that the water had stopped flowing long ago. Tomas went to fetch smaller tools, a metal spatula, a steel brush, an empty bucket, and a piece of stiff wire. He knelt before the stone basin. The smell of the stagnant mud was strong, a heavy aroma of swamp and damp organic matter. He took the spatula and dug its tip into the thick mud. The texture was dense, almost like clay. He began to remove large chunks of black mud, dropping them into the empty bucket. The wet, heavy sound of the mud falling into the plastic echoed softly.
He worked methodically, emptying the basin layer by layer. As he neared the bottom, the spatula scraped against the original stone, producing a sharp, hollow sound. He removed the last roots clinging to the bottom, revealing a small metal drain completely clogged with compacted dirt. He used the tip of the spatula to scrape the crust over the drain. The dirt broke loose in dry flakes, revealing the small drainage holes. With the basin mostly empty of mud, Tomas picked up the steel brush. He vigorously scrubbed the inner walls of the stone basin. The brush scratched the surface with a harsh sound, dislodging remnants of dry moss and encrusted earth. Dark dust rose into the air. The stone, once black with grime, began to reveal its natural color, a light gray granite with small sparkling points that reflected the sunlight. Now, the challenge was the metal pipe in the wall. Tomas stood up and examined the small outlet. The tip was blocked by a hard plug of earth and limestone. He took the piece of stiff wire and inserted its end into the pipe's opening. He pushed carefully, feeling the resistance of the accumulated dirt. The wire scraped against the metal's interior with a thin sound. He twisted the wire, forcing it to pierce the blockage. Small pieces of dry earth fell into the clean basin. He pushed the wire deeper, twisting and pulling, loosening the internal crust. Suddenly, the wire passed straight through. The resistance vanished. He pulled the wire back. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The garden remained silent. Then, a damp sound came from within the wall, a muffled gurgle, as if water was struggling to find its way back. Tomas took a step back and watched. A dark, thick drop of muddy water dripped from the pipe and fell into the stone basin. Plink. The sound was crisp. Then another drop. Plink. The rhythm began to quicken. The drops transformed into a thin stream of dark water, carrying the remaining earth that had been trapped in the pipe. The muddy water flowed down the basin's walls and began to descend through the newly unblocked drain. Tomas watched the water flow. The thin stream gained strength. The pressure slowly increased. The water's color began to change. The dark brown lightened, becoming translucent, until finally a continuous flow of clear, transparent water began to gush from the metal pipe. The clean water struck the bottom of the stone basin with a joyful and constant sound. That sound transformed the garden. The gentle murmur of running water filled the space, breaking the dense silence that had dominated the place. It was a fresh, continuous sound that brought a sense of movement and uninterrupted life. The water filled the shallow basin, creating small ripples on the surface, and then flowed tranquilly down the drain, disappearing into the soil. Tomas rested his hand on the basin. The stone began to cool with the continuous contact of the water. He dipped his fingers into the flow emerging from the pipe. The water was icy cold, pure. He washed his hands, scrubbing the earth from his fingers, feeling the current wash away the day's grime. The water ran over his hands and fell back into the basin, sparkling under the sunlight filtering through the pruned branches. The fountain was alive. The garden's heart had begun to beat again. The garden now had light, a path, and water. Its fundamental structures were clean and restored. However, the earthen edges along the stone path and near the walls lay bare. The dark earth, turned over by the rake and cleared of dead leaves, formed empty beds that awaited something new. Tomas had prepared the ground, and now was the moment to bring color and texture back to those margins. He brought several heavy bags of new topsoil, rich in compost, and a wooden box filled with small seedlings in plastic pots. These were hardy plants with varied foliage, some with broad green leaves, others with small touches of purple and silver at their tips, and some that would bear tiny white flowers. He also brought a polished metal hand trowel and a zinc watering can. Tomas began with the bed bordering the start of the stone path. He opened the first bag of new earth. The scent that rose was immediate and comforting. It was the aroma of fertile, damp earth, rich in nutrients, very different from the smell of ancient dust that had dominated the garden before. He took the hand trowel and began to spread the new earth over the old soil. The earth flowed from the trowel with a soft sound, covering the surface with a dark, fluffy layer. He mixed the new earth with the old, turning over the first few inches of soil to create a homogeneous bed. The texture of the mixture was perfect.
loose enough to allow roots to grow, yet firm enough to hold moisture. He smoothed the surface with his ungloved hands, feeling the granular earth and fresh dampness against his skin. Next, he took the first pot from the box. It was a plant with dense, rounded leaves. He gently squeezed the sides of the thin plastic. The plastic crackled softly. He turned the pot upside down, supporting the plant's base with his hand, and pulled the container away. The root ball came out whole. The thin white roots formed a tight web around the pot's soil. With his thumbs, he gently massaged the base of the root ball, delicately loosening the roots so they would know they had space to grow. He used the trowel to open a hole in the prepared bed. The earth yielded easily. He settled the seedling into the center of the hole, ensuring the plant's base was level with the surrounding soil. Then, with both hands, he pushed the loose earth inward, filling the empty spaces around the roots. Then he pressed the soil around the stem firmly, using the palms of his hands. The movement secured the plant in place, anchoring it to the ground. The visual contrast was immediate. The vibrant green foliage stood out against the black earth and the pale gray of the stone path right beside it. Tomas repeated the process. He moved along the border, kneeling, maintaining a constant and tranquil rhythm. Dig the hole, loosen the roots, position the seedling, cover with earth, press. He alternated the plant's textures, creating an organic design, a wide-leaved plant next to one with thin silvery leaves. The garden began to gain a new layer of life, low and close to the ground. With each plant placed, the bed seemed more filled, more intentional. The work was meticulous and required care. His hands were completely covered in earth, but there was a tactile satisfaction in manipulating the soil and the plants. The silence of the garden was filled only by the sound of running water from the fountain in the background, the distant song of a bird, and the soft rustle of leaves as he settled them into their new places. When the last seedling was planted near the base of the wall, he stood up and stretched his back. The bed's once bare strips of earth now displayed a continuous line of fresh green. The plants were still small, but the promise of growth was there. He picked up the zinc watering can and walked to the stone fountain. He dipped the can into the basin, letting the clean water fill the container. The metal grew heavy and cold in his hand. He returned to the start of the path and tilted the can over the first seedling. Water flowed from the perforated spout, falling like a fine, controlled rain on the leaves and earth. The sound of water hitting the fluffy soil was a comforting whisper.
The dry earth absorbed the water instantly, darkening even further. Water droplets clung to the green leaves, sparkling like tiny lenses under the afternoon sun. Tomas walked slowly along the stone path, watering each plant carefully, ensuring the earth around the roots was well moistened. The scent of wet earth rose strong and clean, spreading throughout the air. It was the smell of a cycle beginning anew. The plants were anchored, quenched, and ready to transform that soil into their new home. The sun began to descend, changing the quality of light within the garden. The bright midday yellow gave way to a thick golden hue that entered at oblique angles through the leaves of the pruned trees. Shadows lengthened, drawing soft shapes across the ground and the stone walls. The physical work was done. The tools were clean and grouped near the entrance. Tomas stood, leaning against the frame of the heavy wooden door, gazing at the space that had revealed itself before him. The transformation was complete. What was once a dense, chaotic tangle of neglect now breathed with calm and purpose. Tomas's gaze traveled across the garden, absorbing the changes not merely as images, but as concrete sensations. The gray stone path, clean and level, cut through the space with a soft, inviting line. The stones, once hidden beneath years of decomposition, now reflected the golden light of the late afternoon. Tomas stepped forward and began to walk slowly. The soles of his boots touched the stone's rough and solid surface with a low, rhythmic sound. It was a sound of stability. He felt the firmness of the ground beneath his feet, a secure foundation that guided his steps towards the garden's heart. As he walked, he noticed the change in air temperature and movement. Before, the air inside had been stagnant, trapped by the ceiling of dead branches and tall weeds. Now, a light breeze passed freely, caressing his face and stirring the tall leaves of the trees. The clean canopies allowed the wind to circulate, creating a constant soft whisper in the living wood. The smell of mold and dust had completely vanished. In its place, the air carried the damp, rich aromat of newly watered earth, mingled with the subtle freshness of the new seedlings' green leaves. He looked at the path's edges. The beds, dark from the recent watering, highlighted the vibrant green of the small plants. Water droplets still sparkled on some leaves, catching tiny reflections of the sunlight. The plants seemed settled, as if they had always been there, silently absorbing the soil's strength and the light now permitted to them. The natural geometry of the leaves brought a soft texture that contrasted perfectly with the hardness of the path's stones and the ancient walls. Reaching the center of the garden, under the shade of the two large trees, Tomas paused. He looked up. The sky, now tinged with a deeper blue and shades of orange, was visible through the network of healthy branches. The architecture of the trees was majestic, freed from the weight of dead wood. They seemed like living pillars, supporting a canopy that protected yet did not imprison. The light filtering through the leaves created patterns of shadow and light that danced slowly over the path and the earth, a mosaic in constant, subtle motion. The dominant sound in the garden, however, came from the back. It was the continuous, tranquil voice of the water. Tomas followed the path's curve to the stone fountain set against the wall. Water flowed from the metal pipe in a constant, clear and bright stream. The sound of water striking the stone basin's surface was hypnotic, a rhythmic note that anchored the surrounding silence. He approached the basin. The wet stone had darkened, revealing deep shades of gray and blue that weren't visible when dry. The water in the basin was crystalline, reflecting the sky above. Tomas extended his hand and let the stream of cold water run over his palm and fingers. The cool temperature was a pleasant relief. He felt the purity of the movement, the simple energy of something that flows without interruption. That walled space was no longer a repository of forgotten things. It was a refuge. The tall wall of ancient stones, which once seemed an oppressive barrier, now fulfilled its original role, to protect. It kept the outside world at bay, preserving the peace of that square of earth. The garden now possessed a palpable harmony. The solidity of the stones, the fluidity of the water, the rootedness of the plants, and the open space in the air coexisted in perfect balance. Tomas withdrew his hand from the water, lightly shook his fingers, and dried them on the side of his work pants. He felt no rush to leave. The contemplation of the outcome was the true reward for all the physical effort. Every tired muscle in his body seemed justified by the silent beauty of that place. The garden needed nothing more. It was clean, structured, and alive. The rest would be done by time and nature. Tomas walked back along the stone path, feeling the tranquility of the space seep into his own breath as the sunlight began to bid farewell to the treetops. Twilight slowly advanced, replacing the golden tones with a cool, bluish light that softened all the garden's contours. Shadows ceased to be defined shapes on the ground and began to merge, filling the spaces between the trees and the walls. The bright green of the new leaves darkened, and the color of the path stones blended with the surrounding earth. The garden was preparing for the night. Tomas walked to the entrance where he had left his tools. He picked up the machete, the shears, the shovel, and the watering can, organizing them in a corner near the wall outside. The weight of the tools in his hands reminded him of the day's effort, a familiar and satisfying heft. The fatigue in his shoulders and legs was dense, a warm torpor that called for rest, but his mind was light, emptied of any worry. Tomas returned to the threshold of the solid wooden door. The darkened iron ring hung silent. He didn't pull it to close the door. Instead, he left the heavy wooden leaf resting against the stone frame, keeping the entrance almost entirely open. The garden no longer needed to be a locked secret. Tomas leaned his shoulder against the stone arch that formed the entrance. The stone was cool against his shirt, transferring the temperature of the night that was beginning to settle. He crossed his arms and looked into the darkened space. Without the sunlight to highlight colors and shapes, the garden became an experience of invisible sounds and textures. The night wind swept through the tall treetops, creating a long, continuous rustle, like the sound of a deep breath. It was a vast sound, filling the air above him. Under that sound, firm and unwavering, was the voice of the water. The continuous flow falling into the stone basin echoed through the wall's sides, a liquid, constant lullaby that marked the passing of seconds. The dampness from the newly watered soil began to rise, bringing a nocturnal scent of fresh earth and resting roots. It was an aroma that spoke of permanence and silent cycles. The nature within began its invisible work of absorbing water, firming roots, and growing in the dark.
Tomas closed his eyes for a moment, just listening. The beat of the water, the wind in the leaves, the solidity of the stone wall at his back. Balance was restored. He felt the rhythm of his own breath align with the calm rhythm of the environment. There was nothing more to cut, move, or plant. The space was whole again. He opened his eyes, took one last look at the stone path disappearing into the serene shadows, and left the hidden garden to the tranquil embrace of the night.